It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined again by Jeff Prang. He is a nominee for assessor in Los Angeles County. We are getting towards the end of this election cycle. You have been running for a good amount of time, I guess you could say.
Over a year.
Over a year. You made it out of the primary. You're now in a general. There was 13?
12 candidates in the primary. I placed first on June 3rd.
So I want to talk to you, before we get into some specifics, about running for a countywide office in a county that's as large as the state of your native Michigan, if not bigger, for an office that doesn't get a lot of attention.
It is really unfortunate. I think the public should be concerned about this because we're running in a jurisdiction that has more people than the state of Michigan.
Right.
It's very difficult to raise money, and there's severe limitations. Now, that may sound good at first glance, but the challenge is it's very difficult for candidates to reach voters, to educate them, and tell you who you are, what you've done, and what your vision is. These countywide races are really dependent on something called a slate card.
Right.
They're these mailers where a bunch of candidates pay to be on and split the cost, but it doesn't tell you anything except the candidate's name and maybe have a sentence saying Jeff Prang is the best candidate. So as a voter, you're really going in blind. You have to work hard to get good information about candidates for countywide office.
And the reality is the assessor, it's an important position. I mean, you do have a say in matters that impact voters every day.
The assessor's office is probably the most foundational office for all local government.
Tell us.
Schools, cities, and the county all depend on the assessor doing their job well in order to generate, the assessor doesn't generate property taxes. We set the foundation for the generation of property tax. Schools, public education, police, roads, public health, all depend on property tax. And if the assessor isn't doing their job well, that may mean that dollars that could be going into property taxes or into services are not being collected. It could also mean that as an individual taxpayer, that your taxes are too high or too low. It is a critically important administrative, a very complex administrative job, and people need to vote carefully.
And when you talk about your property taxes being too high and too low, the assessor actually does have a very specific role when the economy goes down, when there's a downturn, to help property owners. And an assessor who's lazy, that could be a problem.
The job of the assessor is to establish the value of your home at the time of a transfer. Usually that's at the purchase price or the market price, not always. And it needs to be accurate, because if it's not accurate, you could be paying too much or too little in taxes. In a declining market like we had in 2008, your property may fall, and the value may be less than your purchase price. And at that point, it's called Proposition 8, entitles you to a property tax decrease based on the market value of your home when it's less than the base.
And the key is that you don't have to ask for it. The assessor is supposed to affirmatively provide it to you.
We do it. The assessor's office does it proactively. The challenge that the assessor's office has is resources. There's about 400 line-level appraisers out of a whole complement of 1,400 employees, and they're responsible for establishing the value for 2.6 million parcels of property. So to get all that work done annually, to produce the annual assessment roll, there's a lot of techniques that are used for mass appraisal. So if your property lost value because of the recession, we used a lot of mass appraisal techniques to estimate what we thought your reduction in value was.
And you've worked in the assessor's office 2 different times.
I started my career in the assessor's office in the early 1990s.
Okay.
I was an assessor, Kenny Hahn. I was there for a couple of years, and I went through the real estate appraisal training program. I came back 2.5 years ago as part of the reform administration because, as you know, the current assessor is under indictment for political corruption. So I was brought in as one of the people to help add some integrity and stability to that office and help pick up the pieces.
But let's talk about the market and its stability, because it does seem as if the real estate market is more stable than it was a few years ago, and if anything, maybe on an upswing?
As an indicator of where the economy is going, Los Angeles real estate has had a 4-year steady increase in valuation, and each annual increase is bigger than the year before. This year, I think the number's about 5.5% growth.
Yeah,
5.47.
Right.
Last year was about 4.5%. The year before that, it was about 3%. So there is market home values, property values are returning to their pre-recession levels. That's good for for people who lost money in the lost value on their homes, but it's also good for local government, which is depends on property taxes to pay for services.
At the same time, like we said, Los Angeles County, a massive county, 10 million people live in the county. I have to think that certain parts of the county are doing better than others in terms of real estate values.
Just generally speaking, the north part of the county is still struggling. There's about 350,000 properties in LA County that are still under their base year values, and most of those are in the northern part of the county.
Is that Antelope Valley, Palmdale?
Exactly.
Okay.
But the west side, good portions of the San Gabriel Valley, South Bay, those areas are almost back to pre-recession levels.
Even the San Gabriel Valley, and I say that because it's fairly close to the Inland Empire, which is on the upswing, but it's still, those areas are struggling.
There's a lot of investment going on, a lot of turnover in the San Gabriel Valley, a lot of, actually a lot of Chinese investment in property in the San Gabriel Valley.
And it's interesting you mention Chinese or international investment, because part of the challenge has been for many folks in the San Gabriel Valley as well as the Inland Empire is that the Chinese, and not Chinese Americans, the Chinese are coming in such large numbers and buying up properties, and it's hard for just single families to buy a property because the Chinese are offering cash.
I don't know what the total impact of that is, but it can serve to push up property values. And I think the one thing we policymakers need to be concerned about or be aware of is, is the market overheating? Is there? And
I want to ask you about that, because when we think about the west side of Los Angeles, the South Bay, those are very attractive communities. San Fernando Valley. I mean, look, the whole county's attractive, but in the final analysis, I mean, I get these real estate flyers. I like flipping through the LA Times, and it just seems like prices are really spiking again.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I'm not as concerned that the market is overheating. I think there are some attempts, or there's some indications that values are being pushed, but then there's always a check against that home buyers slow down and aren't willing to get into these bidding wars like they were leading up into the 2008 recession. So there's a little bit of it, not quite as bad as it was before. I think it's something that policymakers need to be cognizant of and keep the thumb on the pulse of.
Because folks talk about as almost the panacea, we need to return to pre-recession levels. Now that may be fine for state funding, for schools, but pre-recession levels, that's to some is too high.
The most important thing about pre-recession levels is simply for those people who lost a lot of money, who bought in 2007 and lost value. You would like them to be able to recover the value that they invested in their property minimally.
What about foreclosures? I mean, that was really if I can say the F word, during the last few years. I mean, have we seen foreclosures pull back?
I actually don't know what those numbers are, but I think a lot of the places where foreclosures had a big impact on property values, again, is in the northern part of the county, where there was a lot of push for higher property values. And when the market collapsed, those properties lost a lot of value. They were well overpriced.
A lot of talk about Prop 13, and I want to get a sense, does the assessor have any say in Prop 13? Because I hear all this discussion about, this one's for Prop 13, not...
The assessor is a subject matter expert in the implementation of Prop 13.
Okay.
But truthfully, the assessor is to Proposition 13 what a highway patrol officer is to writing the law. They don't make the policy.
Writing the ticket.
They implement it. Yeah. So when policy, the policy affecting Prop 13 happens in the legislature, and it happens at the ballot box because it's a constitutional amendment that requires the people to act. But we can tell you what we think will happen if there are changes to Prop 13.
But there's nothing you can do to impact Prop 13.
No, only as an elected official with a bully pulpit.
But
in terms of policy impact, there's nothing.
Okay, his name is Jeff Prang. He is a member of the West Hollywood City Council, but he is now a nominee for the Los Angeles County Assessor's Office. The election is held on November 4th. Don't forget to vote. My name is Brad Pomerance, and this is California Edition.